No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Hey everyone, this is Chris.
And Lorenzo.
And welcome to our Best of Saturday series. Now that we have hundreds of episodes, we get a lot of listeners asking us where to start.
So we'll be selecting some of our most popular episodes to share each Saturday from our years of podcasting. We hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, what I want to talk about is the fact that I've always heard, and I believe, that water seeks its own level. And if people have never heard that term before, what it means is that if you have water and you kind of tilt the container it's in, it's always going to be flat. It's going to be the same level. It won't kind of form to the sides no matter how you have it turned. It's always going to be flat in relation to the ground. And that happens in people too. People tend to seek their own level in that they will surround themselves with people that make them feel comfortable with who they are, that make them feel comfortable with accepting of who they are. And we talk about this from an acceptance standpoint, and it's important. I think it's important to have people in your life that accept you for who you are. But when you're talking about being a leader and developing other people, I think it's also equally important to make sure that individuals understand that who they surround themselves with not only is about making sure they feel accepted, but that they will conform to who those people are around them. Whether that means they get better or they get worse or they stagnate or whatever that means. And so what I'm wondering is, have you ever had a conversation with an employee that said basically, I can see that you're talented, I can see that you can go a lot of places and you express that you want to, but I'm telling you, the company you keep is holding you back. Has that ever happened?
Absolutely. Personally, I've somewhat been the victim of that myself, though. I think that it's a great point, and it's a great conversation to have for a lot of different types of reasons. I think feeling comfortable and surrounding yourself with people that you can relate to, that you have things that are very clearly in common. Maybe you see the business the same way. Maybe you have the same type of drive or motivation to want to accomplish goals. Like, these types of things are extremely helpful in building your confidence and validating some of the ways that you want to do things. I also think, though, that having people in that circle around you that you want to make you better requires them to be different. It's very rare that you see people that run, in the same group where everybody is getting better. And the reason why is because nobody's challenging one another. It's too aligned. When you think about building teams and talking to people, it is the absolute value of having diversity on a team, and the idea that different people see the work in different ways, and it makes you challenge your own thoughts and kind of makes you look at things in a way that hopefully the idea is that the best idea wins when you have a bunch of different types of ideas coming to it. So to answer your question, where I've seen that and had the type of conversation with employees that way is, helping them to see and understand, you can choose in life to a degree who you want to surround yourself with. Like people say, you get to pick your friends, but don't you get to pick your family. There are situations where maybe you're just in a group of people that is not your choice, but for whatever the reason is, you kind of have to deal with that for the time being. But when it comes to work and building your career and progressing in your career, you actually have a lot more choice than I think some people realize. You have a choice to who you surround yourself with. How are they getting results? How are they, driving not only the business forward, but how are they making themselves better? How are they challenging you to be better? And a lot of times what you have is a young leader or somebody who is seeing somebody else having success, and then they want to be around that person because they want that same level of success. And what they haven't thought about was, how do they achieve that success, and is that aligned with how I want to be myself and how I want to treat other people and how I want people to see me? So that's usually the dialogue that I'm having with people, is just helping them to understand you have to take more into consideration when you're making these choices of who you surround yourself with professionally, because there's a lot of nuance there that's going to help you either become a better leader or a better employee, or in some instances hold you back or take you down a certain path that's going to limit your career opportunities.
Right. I agree with that. I think where we see this kind of rear its ugly head in a lot of real world situations, especially when it comes to retail leadership, is that there are a lot of companies out there who really have a hard time promoting people from within without changing where they are at the same time. And it's this concept of, we work better and we do better work when we are close to the people. In every engagement survey is, I have a best friend at work. It's like, okay, great. So we love it when people have a best friend at work. But let's say that you're really close friends with everybody you work with, and all of a sudden somebody wants to get promoted. Is it harder then to hold your friends accountable when now you are in a leadership role versus when you're not? And I don't care who you are. Yes, it's harder. Of course it's harder. Like there's no question. If you have a close relationship with somebody, it's going to be harder. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm not saying good leaders I know who have been able to do that and who can ground the decisions and the coaching and the accountability in something more than just I'm following policy. I'm not who I used to be. It's not what it's about. But that's why a lot of companies will tend to say, this person's ready to be promoted. Let's see if they'll go to this other location instead, or this other place instead, because now they have the skills and they're not being expected to hold accountable people that they used to have beers with every Saturday night, And so, but again, that's something that is very specific to the culture of an organization or to the culture of what's comfortable to a person. And I think it can still be done. I don't think there has to be this like kind of accepted, oh yeah, we can't lead people that we used to be friends with, or we can't even still be friends with them. It just changes the relationship. If you want to if you want to turn something from a job into a career, then you make that decision. And at some point that does change the nature of a relationship, but it doesn't necessarily mean it has to end, and it doesn't have to be uncomfortable. It just is the way it works sometimes.
No, I love that call out. And I think like when you're, talking about how those around you will influence you to a degree, and you will kind of become the summation of those people that you spend the most amount of time with. One of the questions that I love to ask people as they are taking their journey into becoming a leader is, I was like, let's talk about this. Let's talk about your peer relationships. Let's talk about, how do you see the team now? Who do you go for when it comes to mentorship or questions? Who helps you to navigate some of these things? And I'm looking to just have dialogue with a person. And I say, okay, so when has there been times when you've had to either challenge that group around you or that person around you? When was the time that you've had to challenge a mentor, or somebody that you've worked alongside with? And again, just having dialogue to understand. And then I say, okay, so if you were their manager, would you do it differently? Would you approach that solution differently? Would you approach that conversation differently? Would you say something different to them if you were in fact the manager, and why? And I let them think about that. And the reason why I do that is because if any of the answer to that is yes, I would, or a little bit, then that's the work that we actually have to do, right? Because you never want to put yourself in a situation where your title is dynamically changing the relationship you have with those around you. You do not want to be in that space. And I would say, so my ask of you is start to act that way now and start to have some of those conversations now while you're still a peer with people, while you're still friends with them. Let them see you change and evolve. Tell them up front that you need to get better at this and you want to find balance and you want to still have a great relationship with them, but you're going to, you want to be able to be in a better space in regards to influencing change or what you want to see. But like, start doing that work now, because nobody wants a leader who says like, well, now I have the title, and the reason why is because now I'm the manager, or now I'm the leader, now I have to do this. That's not going to be good for any of those types of relationships, because I agree with you. Like, it absolutely can be done. I've seen it happen. I've been a part of that in happening in my own career. And you're 100% correct. It is not easy a lot of times, especially if you've not done that pre-work.
Yeah, the pre-work is so important, because if there isn't any pre-work, then the assumption from the people who you are friends with and who you are now responsible for part of their accountability or holding them accountable is that the change in the conversation occurred at the same time as the change in the title. So naturally, they're one and the same. And they need to see those changes not be different. So if the conversations start happening beforehand, first of all, they're going to be better conversations anyway, because if you don't have a title and you are not actually responsible in terms of your job description for holding somebody accountable, meaning whether or not they change or don't change won't reflect on you. This is just about what's right and making sure that we're following guidelines and we're following the culture and the values of whatever organization it is. If the conversations are rooted in that, it's more likely they'll be continued to be rooted in that once the title is there, because you're well versed in that kind of language. If any conversation you have with a person, regardless of whether they were your friend or you've never met them before, or whether you've only had a relationship with them in a leadership capacity versus you started out, no matter what, if any of the conversation of what they're expected to do is rooted in something other than what is right for following the values of the organization, if it's rooted in a because I'm the leader, you've already failed, regardless of what your relationship ever was with them. What you're essentially saying is I don't believe that we have the kind of relationship where we can have a real conversation about this. So now I'm expecting you to do this because I've told you to do it. At that point, it's really difficult to get that relationship back or to make it happen. So it's a lot easier to just not let it get there in the first place and to keep the conversation rooted around something other than rank.
Absolutely. And here's a really good litmus test on whether or not those around you are the right people, is when you start to have some of these challenging conversations, or if you go to people around you and say, hey, I'm trying to be better because I have career aspirations and I need to get more comfortable with managing the relationship where we can still be close and we can still be friends, but at the same time, if I have more responsibility, that we can have this dialogue. If you start going to people and talking about this and saying this is what you're looking to do, and their reaction, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, their reaction is like, no, well, you're just trying to be this. You're just trying, like, if they're negative, if their reaction is initially negative, that's the wrong people. Those are the wrong people around you. If the people are saying, hey, like, of course, like, dude, like, yeah, I got your back. Like, what do you need from me? You know what? Because, like, I also am looking to try to get better at this. So maybe we can do this together. If their reaction is positive and supportive and they get it and they want to work on that with you, then you have the right collection of people. And I think those are really the opportunities for you to understand. Do you have people that are there that really want to see you succeed, that are going to help you to become better? Or do you have people there that just want you to stay mediocre, stay within the crowd, don't make too many waves, hang out with us and complain about everything, never offer solutions, just complain? Like, if that's what you're going to get when you start to have that dialogue, those are concerning elements, and those are the things that will hold you back long term.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is, and I used to think it was, you want to surround yourself with people who have similar aspirations. Like, if you want to grow, you want to surround yourself with people who also want to grow. And what you just said kind of made me kind of rethink that a little bit. And it's not about that they have to want to have the same level of career aspirations that you have. It's just that they have to be able to be comfortable enough in where they are to know what they want and still be supportive of you. And so you don't have to surround yourself with people who are going to be your competition, so to speak, challenging you for the next role because they want it too, or any of that. As long as they're okay, if they're comfortable enough with saying, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm happy with where I am, but I don't need the people around me to stagnate in order to validate my own comfort with where I am. I'm comfortable where I am just because I am who I am. And this is what I like. And this is what I'm happy doing. I don't necessarily want to get promoted. I don't necessarily want to move ahead. I like what I'm doing. And hey, if I have a friend who wants to move ahead, what can I do to help them get ahead? That's very different. And so it's not necessarily that you need to have people around you that, again, want to grow and want to get better. They just can't stop you. And it's very natural for a person who wants to get better, but who doesn't know how to, or who doesn't have that motor, doesn't have that engine to say, I want to go do it. Or maybe they have other stuff going on in their lives right now that makes it really difficult for them to get there. Or maybe, honestly, for lack of a better term, maybe they're just immature. Maybe they just haven't grown up yet. And that happens to a lot of people. Maybe they just haven't grown up yet. For people like that to say, it's uncomfortable for me if the people around me are trying to get better because it's a constant reminder of my inability to do this right now, that typically leads to them trying to hold you back. And if you're seeing that, they're not going to say it to you because they don't even know that's what they're doing. They just know what feels comfortable and what makes them feel accepted. But if you know of yourself that you want to get better and you constantly find yourself ignoring things that you shouldn't ignore, allowing things to happen where you know in that pit of your stomach that it's not the right thing, but you don't say something because you don't want to get, called out by your friends, is like, what do you, like, who are you? Like, what happened here? If that's what you're thinking yourself, be in touch with that. because it probably means you don't have the right people in your life.
Yeah, and I look, I also, understand that not every situation allows you to have that level of, good dialogue with people because again, leaders are vast and there's big deltas between, good empowering leaders that will allow that type of transparent dialogue to happen among team members and build cultures where people want to help and want to grow. And then there are, organizations that have leaders where it's stifled. It's kind of like a dog eat dog. It's very much a competitive element. You don't want to show weakness, and you've got to outperform those other same people that are trying to get the promotion or get the job or that type of thing. So it can be difficult where your environment is such where you don't have the opportunity to have that level of dialogue with those around you professionally. There are a lot of teams and organizations and things that I've seen and somewhat been a part of where you have people on a team that are so caught up in advancing themselves that they're going to do whatever they got to do to make it happen. And that can be really difficult, in that space to figure out because sometimes you have to have that person in your circle.
Right.
It's not optional, right? And that's really the harder part is like, how do you navigate some of these waters if you've got somebody that you can't just opt out of your close circle? What do you think? How would you approach that type of a situation, knowing that I can select some that are in my circle, but then there are some that I have to have in my circle? How do you either reduce their influence or do something in such a way that you can leverage them for what you actually need to move forward?
I think the key is consistency in your own actions. Because if you are consistent in your actions, meaning the decisions you make are grounded in your own personal values and they're grounded in the values of whatever organization you're trying to move up within, if that's what your goal is, then then you can ground your decisions in that, and that will be visible to people. So over time, people will see that your decision process and the things that you do are rooted in something other than the desire to move ahead. Because if people get the impression that that's what they're rooted in, then you become not trustworthy. And I'll be honest, in today's world, one of the things, I wouldn't have been able to say this 30 years ago. 30 years ago, a desire to get ahead and a willingness to do basically whatever it took might actually have made you get ahead. I think it's less likely today. Less likely today that would happen. More likely, and I know it happens, bad people get promoted too, but in today's world, I think a lot of whether or not you can get promoted is the consent of the people that you will be leading. And leaders who are worth their salt, who are promoting other leaders, need to have a relationship with the direct reports of those people so they can talk to them about the real world. Is this person who should be leading you? You should, and not that they get to make the decision, but it should influence your decision. It should definitely be out there. And if all you're seeing is, they perform really well and they work really hard and I can tell they want to get ahead, but I don't know that I can trust them. I don't know that I want them to be my leader. That's a very different conversation. But if you're rooting every decision you're making in values, then you become very predictable as a person. Those are the kind of people that people want as their leader, is someone that they can predict what they're going to do because their decisions are rooted in values. The more you can do that, the more that the other people around you that you have to have in your network, like you asked about, who maybe aren't doing that kind of thing, they're going to learn from you, hopefully, or they will set themselves apart as maybe performing just as well as you, but not rooted in values. And on a long enough timeline, that will serve you better than it will serve them.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 Minute Hack.
The 1 Minute Hack.
All right, for this episode's 1 Minute Hack, here's what I want you to do. Get out your pen and paper, and I want you to write down what your next goal is for the organization in which you work. It doesn't matter whether you are a leader or not, whether you want to be a leader or not, whether you're a leader of leaders or just a leader of people. Write down what your next goal is, the next career aspiration you have. After that's written down, I want you to write down the names of the 5 people you work with whom you spend the most time. The most time at work, outside of work. It doesn't matter in what context, just actual physical measurable time, those 5 people. Once their names are written down, I want you to put a plus or a minus next to each of their names based on the question, does this person help me get closer to this goal, or do they not help me get closer to this goal? And it's not, does this person help me get closer, or does this person get me further away? It's, do they help me get closer or not? So stagnation and detraction are the same thing in this. Do they help you get closer or do they not? And if you don't know the answer, the first step is to have the conversation with them. So if you know the answer and it's a minus, find a way to exit from that person's life as much as you can. Spend as little time around them as you can. If it's a positive, spend more time around those people. And if you don't know the answer, have the conversation with them. Don't just assume that because you have great conversation and because you're nice to each other and because you can hang out on the weekends sometimes, that means that they are supportive of your goal. Articulate that to them. This is my goal. Do I have your support in helping me get there? This is what it means. This is what it means for my actions in the store and around you or in the company in the context of what we're doing. Do I have your support in helping me get there? And can I expect your actions to support me in that? Have those conversations and you'll start to be able to filter out who you should have around you.
Yeah, I think it's a great 1 minute hack. And it's a reminder that even if somebody maybe you mark off as a negative, doesn't mean that they're a bad person. I've had people that are not necessarily, prioritized in regards to my growth, my development, challenge me, that type of thing, but still have a good relationship with them, still, have to work, with them and make sure that it's a professional, good relationship. It's just that, to your point, changing how and where I spend my time is a thing that I can control. So I will have more interactions with those that have the plus sign. I will have more intent to connect with those. And then those that maybe are not, that's okay. Like I said, it doesn't make them a bad person for just different reasons. They may not be as involved as I would like to see them in the space of me, bettering myself and trying to achieve the things that I want to achieve.
Right. It's all about relationships, and we say it all the time, but everybody listening right now has an example they can think of a person that they were close with at a time in their lives. This is not even work related. It could be high school, college, anything. A person you were close with, I mean really close with, for years, and now you're not close with them anymore. Think about what happened. What changed? It doesn't mean either of you did anything bad. There might not have been a singular event. A lot of these times it's we just grew apart. Okay, well, why did you grow apart? Typically it's because one of you decided that at some point you had aspirations where the other didn't match that. And so either you separated yourself from them or they separated themselves from you and you went your separate ways. This is all this is. Find people who will help you get to where you're going and you'll be a happier person.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.